Let me know once you're able to see my screen. Uh, Janki ji, is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
All
Screen
right.
screen is perfect.
Okay, so welcome once again, everyone. And together we are going to weave the legacy of Indian classical dance today. I will just walk all of us through what classical dance is, what are the forms of classical dance, and also put a small brief spotlight on Kathak, because that is a form that I have studied most. So, just when you look at a dancer and a dancer's pose, it feels wonderful. It is filled with the art and the grace of our tradition and heritage. I'll just go through the overview. What are the points that I will cover in today's presentation? I'll first talk about what Indian classical dance is. Why do we call it classical? How many forms of classical dances are there? That many people know Kathak, Bharatanatyam, but we have nine, actually eight classical dance forms. The ninth one will come to that. We'll talk about the common language of dance. What is a common language? So, although there are different forms, the language is the same. Just like whether you speak Marathi or Malayalam or Kannada or English or any other language, you have the same emotions. Similarly, dance will be done in different ways, but it's trying to communicate similar things. So that's the common language of dance. We'll then cover the specificities of Kathak, the Kathak form that I talked about, and we'll also talk about role of classical dance in present times. So classical dance we know, we have seen, but how is it relevant today, and how much is it relevant today? It definitely is. We'll talk about that, and then we'll come to your questions. So let's get started. Indian classical dance. Now, what is classical and why is it called classical? So, basically, classical because it is governed by rules. It has a proper structure, a proper framework, and that is why it is a proper laid out dance. It requires rigorous training. It's not like you learn it for a few hours and you're done. No, it requires continuous practice, and that is what differentiates it from other forms of art. There are so many folk dances also, but a classical will have a proper framework structure, as I said, and it has a cultural heritage or a lineage. It has mentions to in ancient scriptures as well. Even in Mahabharata, there are instances or mentions of classical dances being performed. Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra that you must have heard about, which was composed around between 500 BC to 200 CE, also has detailed descriptions on how what needs to be performed in performing arts, and dance is also a part of that. Other than music and many other things are elaborately, there are a lot of theories described on it in Natya Shastra. Then Acharya Nandikeshwar had written the Abhinay Darpan between somewhere around 5th century to 12th century. So Abhinay Darpan also has mentions, and it talks about the detailed dance expressions and movements. Then oral tradition. So as you must have heard that these classical dances, they were always taught from the teacher to the disciple to the teacher to the disciple, and that is how the Guru Shishya Parampara has continued. Of course, the form has changed now, but that is the legacy, that is the tradition, that is the classical aspect of dance as well. The Ganda Bandhan that must have heard about, that is how classical dance has been taught to the next generations from generation to generation. Now, there are some characteristic features of dance. So let's know about some technical aspects. Nritya, and Natya. So Nritya, what is Nritya? Nritya is the pure dance. Pure only the dance form. It will have footwork or it will have the hand movements, gestures, and Nritya is this dance plus expressions. When you add expressions to it, that becomes Nritya. And Natya is the drama when you're conveying a story. So all these together make the dance, Nritya and Natya. Now, what was the purpose of dance? Why? Why would people dance? I mean, yes, for fun, for engagement, but there are so many deeper purposes. So it would be used to educate. First and foremost, how did classical dance forms start or come to India or grow? The main purpose, most of these dances, if you read about the history, you'll get to know that most of these forms have started from temples. All the temples in our countries, be it in North India or South India, Odisha or West Bengal, the temples were the places where people would go to for praying, for religious aspects, and there would be dances performed there to tell the stories of gods, to tell the stories from mythology, be it from Ramayana, Mahabharata, or Puranas. All these stories were told, and while telling the stories, the artists would perform, dance to add more emotion and expression to it. So, to educate people about these stories, tell them these stories about Lord Ram or Lord Krishna, to entertain, of course, the entertainment aspect comes with that. Educate, entertain, depict stories from mythology, as I mentioned, and offer aesthetic appeal. That was also the cultural heritage, and there was also a spiritual purpose, because when you are doing all this, when you're communicating, you are inciting the upper consciousness, the divine, and also growing spiritually through dance as a performer, and also to the audience who would watch it. They would be glued, enthralled with the dance. That was the higher purpose of dance. And as I said, dance uses all these movements are used, music is used, rhythm, expressions, gestures, and beautiful costumes, drapery. All these would go in accompaniment. I want to make a special mention to Lasya and Tandav. Have you heard of these terms? You must have. Tandav, if you know, is the cosmic dance that Lord Shiva had performed. The vigorous, vibrant movements of Lord Shiva represent the Tandav. The male is what the Tandav represents. Whereas Lasya is the feminine aspect, which Parvati had performed. It has soft, graceful movements, and it represents the universe, the nurturing or the softer aspects of the universe. Now, these elements are embodied in all the dances to a different extent. Now, why the different dance forms? We'll come to that. Now, this must be some of you, most of you must have known, you've heard of Kathak. So, this is, I've just shown a geographical representation of the 9 classical dances and how they are distributed across India. Just take a look at this slide and this map. Kathak, and then now I'll just put it here. Kathak, as you see, comes from central India, around northern part of India. And I've just mentioned Lucknow, Jaipur, and Banaras are called the 3 gharanas of Kathak. If you go to the south, you see Kerala has Mohiniyattam, Kathakali. Bharatanatyam comes from Tamil Nadu. Kuchipudi is originated in Andhra. Odissi from Odisha. Then here in Assam, you have Sattriya. Sattriya is a dance form of Assam. Manipur has Manipuri. And then West Bengal, I've shown Chau. Chau is actually performed in, is also has origination from West Bengal, Odisha, as well as Jharkhand. There are 3 different uh, forms of Chau. We'll come to that. We'll come to each dance form. This is how they are, the classical dances. Of course, we have so many folk dances from many other different regions. But yeah, this is what I wanted to just show the distribution. So let's go take a look at them one by one. Now, this is Kathak. Kathak and Bharatanatyam, I think, are by far the most popularized dance forms today. Of course, the others are also as popular, but I would say these two are have a slightly greater degree of popularity. So Kathak, if you see that, I've shown 2 pictures here. One of them shows this traditional costume with the lehenga, ghagra, and the other one has the anarkali type of dress. Both of these are used in Kathak. Now, Kathak, as I initially said, It originated in the temples of North India. Katha, what is Kathak? How did the word come? Katha kahe, so Kathak kehलाए. Katha is a story. So there were these nomadic storytellers in North India, and they would just roam from place to place, temple to temple, telling the stories of Lord Krishna and Mahabharata and so many other stories. And then the dance steps that they started performing along with the stories formed a dance Kathak. Now, there's also a story that goes in Puranas which says that goddess Parvati had performed Kathak, and then there was one demon, Banasur. So she had taught this dance to Banasur demon's daughter Usha, and later on Usha brought the dance to earth. That is also a story that is told about the origin of Kathak. It, as I mentioned, it has mentions references in Mahabharata as well. So it started with the Bhakti movement, where there was this influence of the rituals of dance, temples, more of the Bhakti bhav and the associated dance. But later on, the Mughal kingdom, Mughals came to India, and then there we had their courts in places. So many dancers, they would appoint them as court dancers. And Kathak was one of them. So when they wanted these dancers to perform, the kings wanted these dancers to perform for them. So the nature of the dance evolved or changed, and then the Mughal emperors would give them some uh, challenges to perform. So Kathak evolved more. It added some new elements. Later on, during the time of British, again it went through a downward. There's a lot of history that goes into it, and again it was revived. So all these events and things have shaped the dance in today. But primarily it is performed on Hindustani music. So it has accompaniment of tabla, harmonium, and violin and other instruments. I've just named a few famous dancers, Kathak dancers. Pandit Gopi Krishna Pandit Birju Maharaj ji, most of you must have heard about him, who has also trained some Bollywood dancers in Kathak. Shashwati Sen, who's a disciple of Pandit Birju Maharaj. These are some prominent names in Kathak. Moving on to Kathakali. So, sorry, I would like to make this interactive as well. If any of you have questions, please feel free to ask me. Okay, but although I know that NLD has kept Q&A for us, but yeah, I will like some yes, no, or something to make it interactive. All right. Now, Kathakali, it means story, play. So it has a story, it has drama also. Now, Kathakali, if you look at the picture that I have shown here, the makeup is so elaborate and the costume. But here also the hand gestures, mudras are very well defined. Facial expressions are very important, especially the eye movements here. They make a use of a lot of eye movements, and these they use to show different types of rasas, the anger, hatred, happiness. And the dancers have tremendous control on their eyes, the pupils, the way they express things through their eyes. They take training on that for years, many years of rigorous training they take. They also have to take training for Kalaripayattu, which is a martial art of Kerala, because the movements that are there in Kalaripayattu are also used in Kathakali dance. So that is it has one of the most difficult ones, and all this training makes a Kathakali dancer. So I have also mentioned Kala Mandalam, Raman Kutti Nayar, Kottakkal Shivaram are some of the famous Kathakali dancers. If you notice, most of the Kathakali dancers prominently are male. Male dancers usually perform this art form. And now I come to Bharatanatyam. Bharatanatyam, I don't think I need to say much about it. Many of us know Bharatanatyam, a very beautiful dance form, very graceful. That also has origins in the temples in Tamil Nadu. It is also called Dasiyattam. It was also originally performed by Devdasis. Thanjavur is the cradle of this dance. And Lord Shiva, Nataraja, as the Nataraja is considered to be the creator of this dance. Bharatanatyam, as you must have seen, most of us, is a fixed upper torso and then bent knees, expressive hand gestures, footwork. Um, it is also seen in many sculptures and paintings that we see in the temples around India, and still performed, popularized in so many, not just so it comes from South India, this, but it is taught everywhere nowadays, learnt everywhere, just like Kathak as well. Comes from North India, but everywhere it is taught, and there are children, there are young youth, everybody learning these dance forms. So Bharatanatyam is based on Carnatic music, where the mridangam is the main instrument, and there are many famous Kathak Bharatanatyam dancers: Rukmini Devi, Mallika Sarabhai, Sucheta Bhide Chafekar, Parimal Phadke, to name a few. Moving on to Mohiniyattam, which comes again from, anybody remembers, I had showed it in the map earlier. Where does Mohiniyattam come from? Participants, you can unmute and answer.
Kerala.
Yes, absolutely. A beautiful dance from Kerala. So Mohiniyattam, as they say, the Mohini roop of Vishnu during the Samudra Manthan, Vishnu, when the demons took the nectar, and Lord Vishnu had to dress up as Mohini, and the dance that he performed. So this is inspired from that, the name. So Mohiniyattam, dance of the enchantress. And this has the prominent, I mentioned the Tandav and Lasya earlier. Lasya is the dance that Parvati had performed, which is full of soft movements and hand gestures, tender, graceful movements. That is the predominant form of Mohiniyattam, where the dancer will move from the hip and side to side. There are a lot of circular movements, and another very, they use this temple jewelry in the dance. Very beautiful dance form that is. Kanak Rede is a very famous Mohini Attam artist for dancer. Moving on to Kuchipudi. Kuchipudi comes from Andhra Pradesh, and Kuchipudi also has, again, every dance form is so beautiful, and it has its own unique style. So here I'd like to make a special mention to poet Siddhendra Yogi, who in the 15th century he refined this dance form. It had a folk fervor, but he refined it so much, and then it got the status of a classical status. And it also makes use of Vachik Abhinay, where dialogues are also used. And if you see in the picture, the distinctive feature about Kuchipudi is Tarangam. That is this brass plate and the pot that the dancer has on her head, which they also use during the performance or a Kuchipudi recital. And that is a unique or special feature of Kuchipudi dance. I've mentioned some famous Kuchipudi dancers such as Vempati Chinna Satyam, Raja and Radha Reddy. There's a couple, and Yamini Krishnamurti, who's also popularized this beautiful dance form. This is Manipuri. Another dance with soft, graceful movements, slow music. So the divine Krishna Radha love story is said to have led to the evolution of the Manipuri dance form. Even this has beautiful, like, graceful movements, not very harsh or strong, but soft movements, mostly calm facial expressions. The music is also very soft with rhythmic footsteps. So this dance form, so if you notice, the dance forms were there, but we've seen that there have been some either kings or some famous dancers who have contributed or played a major role in developing that dance form at times. So in case of Manipuri, it was the Maharaja Bhagya Chandra, who in 18th century he composed many sequences or dances for in Manipuri, and uh, the trend continued. So there are today also there are people performing, learning, teaching Manipuri dance. Rajkumar Chandrajit Singh or Guru Bipin Singh are some known names in Manipuri. I'll move on to Odissi. Now, if you just notice, if you look at this picture, the dancer, you'll feel it's reminiscent of a sculpture in a temple. That is how Odissi is. Most of the movements are like sculpture poses. And they say it's the oldest surviving dance form of India, originated in Odisha. So choka, as I mentioned, choka, where the dancer is bent with the knees and this sort of a pose. Choka is the basic square stance of Lord Jagannath, and that is a characteristic step or movement in Odissi. And Odissi also has three schools: Mahari, Nartaki, and Gotipua. Odissi has lot of sensual and lyrical movements, and mostly has deals with themes of love, passion, devotion. So even this dance form was performed by the Devdasis in Jagannath temple. Guru Kelucharan Mahapatra, Sanjukta Panigrahi, Sonal Mansingh are some very famous Odissi dancers who have further popularized and made this form reach households. So that's Odissi. Now, so uh, to go back, when I was learning Kathak or when I started learning Kathak in college schools, these were the only classical dance forms that we were taught. That we have 7 classical dance forms. That is what I had always learned. But then there was a new addition to the uh, classical table or classical forms of dance, and Sattriya was one of them. So Sattriya was added later. It received this status in the year 2000. Sattriya comes from Assam. Although this dance style is old or it was always there, but the status of classical was not there initially. It was considered a folk dance created around 15th century by Srimant Shankaradev. This is also based on stories from mythology. Now, it was traditionally performed by these male monks or bokots for ritualistic purposes. So, to spread the teachings on religious teachings within monasteries, that is what was the initial purpose of the dance. This also has beautiful, graceful hand gestures, footwork, music, and accompanied by these musical compositions called Borgeets based on classical ragas. And yeah, in the end, as I've mentioned, classical 2000, that is recently it was recognized as classical. After Sattriya, we'll move on to Chau. Now, Chau is actually, I've added it here, but it is not considered a classical dance form. It is still it is treated as semi-classical or folk, but because there is some difference of opinion on in it still regarding its status, I've just added it for that. So Chow has elements of martial art. So martial art plus dance, how it will look like, the blend, that is Chow. So it blends dance, tribal folk elements, and it has this element called Khel, which shows the mock combat techniques. It will show the stylized gaits of birds and animals and movements based on the chores of village housewives. Now, there are 3 subtypes of Chow. There's Purulia Chow, Seraikela, and Mayurbhanj. So Purulia and Seraikela, if you see, they make use of masks like the ones shown in this picture. Mayurbhanj Chow will show the martial combat techniques, but Mayurbhanj will not have use masks. So the last point, as I've mentioned, Sangeet Natak Academy lists only 8 forms of classical dance, including Sattriya, but the Indian Ministry of Culture recognizes Chau as semi-classical. So that is the thing. So those were the beautiful 9 classical Indian dances that we have got from our ancestors, and we need to take them to the next generations. Why? Because of their beauty, because of the value that they bring to us. Earlier, I mentioned about the common language of dance. So, if you see, dance is the only art form that is druk shravya, or it has an audio visual appeal. If you look at any other art form, look at painting or look at sculpture, it gives pleasure to your eyes, beautiful to look at. Or if you listen to music or an instrument, it's good to your ears. But dance will appease both your auditory and your visual senses. It's rooted in mythology, yes. Most all of these dance forms have come from the mythological. They're rooted in that, and that is what they depict. They will invariably have stories from mythology, and which they will be portraying, showing, and teaching lessons through that. The Nritya Natya and Nritya, I've already mentioned to that, is also shown in all the dance forms. So we saw the specificities of different dance that, for example, Mohiniyattam is soft movements, graceful movements. Kathakali will have eye movements and a little bit loud expressions, exaggerated expressions, mask like thing. But these elements are common to all dances. The performative aspect, be it any dance form, it meets because it is to be performed in front of an audience. It is performed in a certain way. So the costume is important, the makeup is important, jewelry, different jewelry in different dance forms. We can go and have an elaborate session on that. But as I said, Mohiniyattam will have the temple jewelry. Kathak will have a different simple jewelry. Bharatanatyam will have, they have the sun and moon here and different ornaments. Odissi will have a different jewelry. So every dance will have a certain jewelry. Music instruments, ghungroos are also used in across almost all the dances, ghungroos. But music, definitely, it's based on that. Instruments, so be it Hindustani music in Kathak or Carnatic music in Bharatanatyam, music is there. Instruments will be different, be it tabla, mridangam, or a dhol, or anything. And all this makes a wonderful spectacle. To continue about the common language, mudra is an important aspect of dance. Mudras are basically hand gestures. So there are around 55 hand gestures. Sanyukta and asanyukta. What is sanyukta? Sanyukta meaning coming together. So if you have gestures using both the hands, like you see in this image, this is a Sanyukta Mudra, or this is a Sanyukta Mudra, this is a Sanyukta Mudra, Anjali Kapoor. Whereas Asanyukta is the mudra that is done with a single hand to show different things. So that is the language of dance. So you don't speak, but you use the mudras, are a very powerful tool or weapon that the dancer uses to express something or to show a story and to perform the dance. Now, I'll give you an example of how mudras are also used differently in different dances. Some dances will use them very prominently, others will just use them uh, in a different way. For example, Krishna. So, if I have to show Krishna, Lord Krishna in Kathak, now this is a mudra called Arala. Krishna will be shown like this in Kathak. This is Krishna. Whereas in Bharatanatyam, they'll use this mudra called Hamsa Paksha. This is how Krishna is shown in Bharatanatyam. And there might be a different mudra in different dances. I cannot comment much on other dances, but the mudras are the same, but how to implement them, how to use them, that will be different in different dances. Navaras, the different rasas or the expressions are also universal or are also used in all the dances. Shringara ras, which is the adoration ras, when you're getting dressed up or ready. Hasya, karun, Adbhut, Raudra or the angry ras, Veer, Bhayanak, Vibhatsa, Shant. All these nine rasas are also depicted in all the dances. And time and space. Why I mentioned time and space? Again, if you observe, a dancer moves across time and space, both. So when a dancer is performing, there's a rhythm or there are beats. Or in Kathak, for example, there are cycles. There is a tal, adi tal, or here you have three tal or teen tal. It is a count of beats. So it is moving in time. And when the dancer is performing, the dancer is also moving in space. Whereas if you see, for example, a Shilpakala or a sculptor will use the space element, or a painter will use the space element to create his or her art. But a musician will use the time element. But dance uses both time and space. These are some of the common aspects across all the classical dances. I'll just come on to some specificities of Kathak. So, Kathak, as I had mentioned earlier, has three gharanas. What is a gharana? A gharana is actually when the dance form got popularized and how it was developed in a certain place according to that place of origin, and they adopted a certain style for that. So let's say Lucknow. Lucknow was one prominent. So Pandit Birju Maharaj ji comes from Lucknow Gharana. He had his three grandfathers or grandfather and their brothers. They kind of set up a certain structure and then they started using certain things, chakris in a certain way or a certain set of bowls. So that form began to be known as Lucknow or Lucknow Gharana. Similar thing happened in Jaipur and a similar thing happened in Banaras. So certain uh, great dancers in the past, they developed the form in a particular way, and then that style began to be known as the gharana. There's a fourth gharana, Raigad, but again there is a difference of opinion whether it is a gharana or not a gharana, all these questions. But these three are the most known and recognized gharanas of Kathak. Ghungroos are an important aspect of Kathak. And as if a student starts learning Kathak, initially they'll learn with, let's say, 20 or 25 ghungroos in 1 foot. And then as the dancer progresses, the number of ghungroos also increases. So ghungroos are quite important. Footwork is important. Why the footwork was important? Because they say during the Mughal period, the dancer, the Mughal emperor would give a task to the dancer, and let's say they would give them a glass filled with liquor and say, okay, balance this on your head and dance. Now how is the dancer going to dance with a glass filled with liquor? So gradually what would happen is the foot became important, and then they started doing footwork in a certain way. So that they say the footwork, it continued now. Now we don't dance like that, but the footwork is very important in Kathak. The chakris or the turns, spiral movements that a Kathak dancer takes is also very important in Kathak. Farmaishi bol. What is farmaishi? Farmaish. To do a farmaish is to make a request. So again, coming from the Mughal influence, the kings would demand the dancer, okay, do this, that on the seventh beat, they could make any certain request because the kings also were connoisseurs of dance. So these artists were not just dancers, they were very creative people, very mathematical people. They had to calculate what to do now. There is this thing, how can I make a bowl or a set of units? How can I fit it on the ninth beat, for example? So they had to satiate or make the king happy, so they would accordingly construct something new out of it, innovate something, create something, and they would perform. So these things also are important in Kathak. Lord Krishna is the god of Kathak. So there are so many compositions on based on Lord Krishna. And yeah, a typical solo Kathak recital. So all these dance forms you saw are, most of them are performed solo. Solo dancers would perform. But nowadays you see all people doing coming together performing group dances. A typical Kathak recital, solo recital, will have a vandana where you are offering a prayer to God, and then the technical dance would be presented, which would be the tal. That is a technical presentation, and followed by abhinay geet. Abhinay would have a thumri or a song. That is how a proper Kathak recital is usually performed by artists. And moving on to the last one now, how is it relevant in current times? So definitely, if you listen to any music or perform a dancer perform, it makes us happy because of the aesthetic beauty. The way the dancer is expressing or showing something gives us a lot of joy. So art for the sake of art, definitely the aesthetic beauty that dance embodies, which is why people still want to learn and take up dance, or also to appreciate our ancient heritage. So with things being so, life getting so fast, with so many things coming in, so today chat GPT can answer our questions, but uh, can it dance for us? No. So you need a dancer to dance, and the sense of appreciation that you get out of it. And that's the legacy that we are carrying, our ancient dance. And only when we learn that, when we watch that, we pass that on, we are going to carry our ancient heritage from uh, previous generations on to the next generations. That is one more reason why they are still relevant, and they are very much more relevant in today's times. Dance offers an excellent exercise. So for me as well, I mean, personal example, if I give you, I never had to perform any other exercise. Dance would just take care of everything: physical movements, concentration, discipline, everything. When you have to do it, it trains you indirectly in all these aspects. The mudras that I showed you, different mudras, if you are a yoga practitioner or if you know yoga, they also talk about these mudras in yoga. So dance in a way also complements yoga, because these mudras are used for healing, and in dance they are a part of the dance. So the inner balance, peace, everything that I mentioned earlier, everything is taken care of. Improves concentration, focus, instills discipline, definitely. And that is the legacy to be passed on to the next generation. So that's the beauty, the aesthetic appeal. And I would also like to end on a note by saying I am personally very happy to see in today's times that when my previous generations, like for example my mother, they never had exposure to this. There was nobody to teach them dance, or they had a sort of feeling where their parents or my grandparents would think it kind of maybe a taboo, that, oh, dance, don't learn dance, I mean, what is there to learn in that? No, that was the time in those days. But things have changed. People are increasingly realize the value and beauty of dance, and there's no taboo, which there was some things that had come up after the British period, and how those things had kind of been shown in a different light, and now that is getting revived. And now if I see the next generation, there are so many of them. So for example, I have two daughters, and both my daughters are learning Kathak, and in their class, at least their three friends, two friends, or every third friend is learning Kathak or Bharatanatyam. And I'm sure that would be the case with you guys also. Your children or your neighbors, somewhere or the other, they are learning dance, which was not the situation several years ago. So it's heartening to see that our legacy is being passed, and they would want to do other dances, maybe Bollywood or any other folk, but they also want to learn classical dance because of the value that it brings to you as a person and to your overall well being and your demeanor, your health, everything. So that is the beauty of classical dance. So, do we have time, Janki? Uh, Janki ma'am? Yeah, that is all I have for all of us.